Let's talk about how using different keys can be very beneficial to creating an arrangement that works for your ukulele and the sound you want to create. Everybody gets stuck in the same keys all the time, but that's not the best way to do things. When you transpose on the ukulele, where you finger to create certain sounds is going to change. It's going to move around the instrument depending on where you're playing things, okay? And so what I want to do in this video is walk you through moving a melody. We'll play Hene Hene Kwaka because folks are familiar with that melody often, and see what changes, what we gain and what we lose from moving through all 12 keys. It might become a little bit tedious, but hopefully it illustrates why you would move to a different key to unlock different fingerings to make some things easier, some things harder. It's always a give and take, but by limiting yourself to only and ever playing in the key of C or the key of F or the key of G, you're really stuck with the same movements and chord positions and melody positions, and if you get to a different key, it can really unlock ways for you to play cool things that you otherwise are not really able to do. Okay, so Hene Hene Kwaka, if you're not familiar with it, the melody kind of goes like this. Time just for our ears. So for our examples, I'm just gonna play the bald melody with some basic chord strums. That was a very filled out, full sounding solo arrangement, and that's not what I want to emphasize, because what we should be thinking about when it comes to keys is where the melody sits and how the chords sit around it. So I'll just do basic chords to show you and kind of illustrate what the possibilities are when you play through those chords. Okay, so this one's really obvious. You are in the key of C, you get the melody, the starting melody right there on your C chord. So you get a big C strum right when you want to start, no problem. And then for F, when you go to the F change, you get basically one of your F variations with the high C. That part is going to be least key dependent because that's always going to tend to be closed. In order to get that reach up there on the 7th fret, you're gonna have to play a higher chord. Like you could do something like this, but because we go to the 2 there, the 2 chord, it's gonna tend to be closed. You know, you're not probably gonna be able to reach this. I can't reach that, that's crazy. So you might play that, but most people are gonna play something like this, where you have 5, 6, 5, 7 to capture the melody of the E note, 7th fret, with a D7. Okay, so moving up from there to C sharp, this is going to be a lot of fretted notes. We're basically taking everything and kicking it up a notch, and we won't start to really see the benefit of changing keys until we get a couple clicks away from here. But we'll play the same thing. And then you would have your F sharp, same shapes. Right, and then you gotta find where you're at here. And so for this note here, when you're in the key of C, you can play this shape, 0, 5, 3, 5, to get the 5 with the high D note. But since I need a high D sharp note now, I don't get that with the open string. So I've got to adapt my chord shape a little bit to get that. Okay, one more to D. Okay, and here's where we get into the options that changing keys gives you. We've been playing, but in this case we have an A note here, which is also our open string. So we could play it like this. Or we could play with a 2-2-2-0 D and take advantage of the open bottom string to move one of our melody notes. That's where it becomes obvious, is when you change back and you don't have a reach already built in and your hand is more in this low position. That's where it's going to make more sense to already be down at this D. And once again, you could play this closed 7, but also the open G fits within our A7 chord, so we could go back to this shape. And if we go up to the key of E flat, we could switch to this lower voicing if we wanted, but we're already here. So in this case, because we don't get the open string for this shape, we're probably gonna stay here. Right? Okay, and then to E. And at a certain point, as you get up, as the melody goes higher and higher, you're gonna want to, instead of playing it, the melody super high up here, you're gonna change octaves and to play the melody in a different place. So especially if you're on low G, you can start thinking about this. At some point here, there'll probably be a crossover. Let's maybe go one more key with the high melody, and then for F on the next one, we'll switch. Yep, gotta find it. It's all high now, right? So it's tricky to see where it's at. Okay, and if we go to F, now I'm gonna jump down the octave, because we're at a point where some of the melody notes are now happening on the E string. We've gotten out of the C string range. Especially for solo arranging, you don't want to be playing your melody on the C string too much, because if you're on a high G, you don't have any lower notes to kind of fill out the sound. If you have the low G, you have a little bit more breathing room, but it's still not ideal. It's nice to get away from that a little bit. So if we're coming down the octave in F, now everything's going to be different. We're starting over again. But basically what's happening is all this that would be here on the high version, if I can find it, my ear's not all tuned in. This is definitely kind of in the bog zone still, of where you're really kind of dragging to get the melody to cut through, and you have to be really mindful of not hitting the top string to cover it up. All coming back to like solo arranging style that we're talking about here, right? And you gotta have a low G to play these melody notes. That's the only melody note that we get on the open A string. You can play this G9 here. So open, 2, 1, open. Okay, and then F sharp. That's a little bit of a challenge, because to play from the B, I need the C sharp note. So either I'm gonna play it here with my pinky on the low G, which tone-wise, it kind of just, at least on my ukulele with the unwound string, it kind of just goes thunk compared to the rest of the notes. So what I would probably do is use that moment to stretch with my index finger to reach that first fret C sharp, and to kind of reset my position so I can come back to the F sharp. Okay, and then same thing again here. Okay, and then to G. Now we have some open strings to work with again. So now we could play here closed, but since we have the open strings, we can start using those. Open top string, top bit of a G, and remember, I'm not playing onto the A string because this is my start melody note. I don't want to cover this up. So, and what we were doing before was, but now that I have the open strings, I can relocate that E melody note to the open string. And then because we're back to open strings on a C chord for our 4, okay, so that's, with this melody, it's kind of funny because you have a 9 note over the 7. So in this case, you could probably just play an A9, would be really nice. And we're back to, in the very first version in the key of C, we were playing this shape. This shape stems from here. This is like the first place we'll see it. Okay, and then the tricky thing is that the melody moves to a G after that. So this shape into a G is not super easy to play. So you could use a fun chord like this, which is 2, 1, 3, 2. Something along those lines will give you both of those melody notes at the same time and keep the harmony. What key are we in? G? And so for that turnaround, our melody moves to the open A. We can play a Hawaiian D7 2020. Okay, and then if we go up to G sharp or A flat. So this one's kind of weird. You could stay in this position and play it just like we played in F. But that's kind of lame. And we get a C note in the key of A flat. This is why if you play in other keys, you start thinking about how the strings are tuned and which part of the scale you're able to use open strings for, right? So in this case, in the key of A flat, you get the open C string as the third, and it's low, right? In the key of C, you get the E string, but it's higher up. It's one place over, and so having the third on that open C there is kind of gives us some interesting opportunities, and we can play it like this, right? We can use that for our low melody. And then what the heck were we doing there? We were playing this. One more time on that one. Okay, and then up to A. Here we go. A is a really killer ukulele key that is super underused because you get 2 built-in gimme strings and a great chord shape to start from with lots of extra fingers to move around for melodies and stuff. Okay, and so here we're back to this kind of thing. We could keep playing this, but also this is an option here as well. I forgot about this for the last key. Right, and we have we could use these two shapes. So we're capturing the melody on the C sharp as our highest note here with this B9, 2, 3, 2, 4. And then our harmony or our melody needs to be an open A. There's a lot of keys to work through, thinking on the fly like this. Open A, and we're still on a B7, so we could play the step B7, 4, 3, 2, 0. Okay, and one great thing about key of A is your turnaround chord is not an E. A lot of people avoid the key of A because it has an E in it, and if you're playing Hawaiian music, no, it doesn't. It's an E7, which is just as easy to play as a G7, maybe even easier. All right, and from that turnaround, E7, you have the open string, and then the hardest thing about playing in the key of A is that you always have this reach to the G sharp with your pinky. From that, you're gonna see this shape a lot if you start playing arrangements, because you use that 7 note in your melody a lot to kind of create that tension and the resolution back to the A. In order to harmonize that, you know, you gotta either use this E7 shape, which is kind of humbug and gross, or this one where you reach. But the cool thing is you don't have to reach to resolve. From here, you just go back to your A and play the open bottom string to create the resolution. B flat. Okay, this one is kind of cool because we get the C7 back by moving up one more time. Our melody goes. So this is a C9, this is a C7, or a C9 if you want to add the middle finger in there. And then we're going to be going to B flat. No. We're in B flat. Our turnaround is the F. So you could play this F7 here, 2, 3, 1, 3, as your turnaround. If you want to be fancy though, you could play F9, make it a little smoother. I've used this the other day in my sophisticated hula playthrough that I posted. So here's the C7. Okay, last one. We have B. And there's nothing nice here that I'm seeing. It's all held. What is it? Right, and then we're back to C. And all of that we did makes C seem so easy. For most situations, for this song and the way that it sits, you're probably going to play the melody in C. But depending on the song, the melody's gonna sit in a different place. So what you wanna do is play with moving the melody into different keys to kind of see how it interacts with the chords. If you only never assume that C is the one, you're going to get into a place where the melody's kind of in between and it doesn't sit super nice in this key. It's going to end up going too high or too low, and you're probably going to be better off playing it in F or in G. And a lot of times when you have a song in a melody that sits too low or too high, you want to go, the first place you should look for a better solution is the kind of inverse opposite farthest away key that you can get to. And from C, that's like F, right? You're moving far enough away that whatever was high or low in the key of C should be right in the middle in the key of F, and vice versa. If you're too low or too high in the key of F, if you move to C, you should once again be right in the middle. But by playing with moving it up a couple of frets from that position, you might find that there are nice movements off of the open strings or off of certain chord shapes that you're able to play that really help facilitate the actual playing of the music. And that's a really fun thing to find and a fun thing to discover. So when you're working towards playing a melody, figuring out a solo arrangement, move it through several different keys before you land on one, because there's probably going to be one that works the best for the range of the melody and where the chords sit on this instrument, right? If you're playing piano, it doesn't really matter. It's all laid out for you, easy peas. You just touch the right keys and you're golden. But with the ukulele, there's fingering logistics that each key is going to lend to the situation. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. There's always pros and cons to each key. But play around with that and see if you can find keys that are more appropriate next time you sit down to arrange a song.